The medical bay of the Archestrian flagship hummed with desperate energy. Queen Sereth knelt beside the dying human, her four-fingered hands trembling as they hovered over his shattered chest. The sterile light cast shadows across Elian's pale face, making him look more ghost than man. "Your Majesty," Chief Physician Vorak approached cautiously, his mantis-like limbs folded in a gesture of resignation. "The human's biology is failing. We've done everything within our knowledge, but his species wasn't meant to survive plasma burns of this magnitude." Sereth's crystalline eyes, ancient and luminous, fixed upon the physician with an intensity that made him step back. "Then expand your knowledge, Vorak. I will not watch another protector fall." The word protector carried weight that resonated through the chamber. Every crew member present knew the story. 3 cycles ago, the Galactic Council had assigned Elian as a diplomatic liaison to the Archestrian court. Humans were a novelty then, a species barely cleared for interstellar travel, primitive by most standards, yet possessing an inexplicable capacity for violence and compassion in equal measure. Most council members had laughed at humanity's application for membership. They were soft-skinned, weak-boned creatures who required specific atmospheric conditions just to survive. They had no natural armor, no venom, no psychic capabilities. They were, by all galactic standards, prey animals who'd somehow stumbled into space travel. Elian had proven them wrong. He'd integrated into Archestrian society with surprising ease, learning their language in weeks, understanding their customs with an intuition that baffled the Queen's advisors. But more than that, he'd done something unprecedented. He'd befriended Princess Lyria, Sereth's daughter and heir to the crystalline throne. Lyria had been a difficult child, cold and calculating like her people, brilliant but isolated. Elian had somehow penetrated that shell. He'd introduced her to human concepts, friendship, humor, hope. He'd taught her games from his homeworld and told her stories of human perseverance against impossible odds. The princess had blossomed under his influence, becoming something more than just another Archestrian royal. She'd become curious about the universe beyond statistics and strategy. She'd learned to care, and today that caring had nearly cost her everything. The Zathian raiders had struck during a routine diplomatic tour of the outer colonies. They'd bypassed the flagship's shields using stolen technology, teleporting directly into the royal quarters. Their target, Princess Lyria, whose capture would have given them leverage over the entire Archestrian Empire. The guards had been neutralized in seconds. The raiders had been professionals, well-armed, well-trained, and utterly ruthless. They hadn't counted on Elian. Security footage showed what happened next. The human had been in the adjacent chamber when the attack began. He'd heard Lyria's scream, a sound that would haunt the survivors who listened to the recording, and he'd reacted with a speed that defied his species' supposed limitations. He'd crashed through a reinforced door that should have required cutting tools to breach. His shoulder had shattered on impact, but he hadn't slowed. The first Zathian raider had turned just in time to receive Elian's full weight, both of them crashing through the princess's study. What followed was 3 minutes of pure, concentrated human fury. Elian had no weapons, no armor, no enhanced abilities. He'd fought with his bare hands, his teeth, and an absolutely terrifying refusal to stop. The raiders had plasma rifles. He'd used furniture, broken glass, and eventually their own weapons against them after ripping them from their clawed grips. By the time backup arrived, 4 Zathian raiders lay dead or dying. Elian had been standing over Princess Lyria, his body a shield, bleeding from a dozen wounds, including the catastrophic plasma burn that had torn through his chest when he'd thrown himself in front of the final raider's desperate shot. He'd looked up at the arriving guards, confirmed Lyria was safe, and then simply collapsed. That had been 6 hours ago. Now, as Sereth watched the human's labored breathing, she felt something that Archestrians rarely experienced: helplessness. Her people had mastered quantum mechanics and could fold space itself, but they couldn't save one human who'd given everything to protect what mattered most to her. "Mother?" A small voice came from the doorway. Princess Lyria stood there, her young face streaked with something humans called tears, a concept she'd learned from Elian. She'd been crying, actually producing water from her ocular organs. a biological response Orchestrians weren't supposed to have. Sareth rose and went to her daughter, but Lyria pushed past, stumbling to Elian's side. "Please wake up," the princess whispered, her small hand grasping his larger calloused one. "You promised to teach me chess. You promised to show me Earth's oceans. You said humans never break their promises." Elian's eyes fluttered open. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper, wet with blood. "Promises are hard when you're dying, little star." "Then don't die," Lyria demanded with childish logic. "Choose not to." A ghost of a smile touched Elian's lips. "Doesn't work that way." Sareth knelt beside them both, and in that moment, she made a decision that would change galactic history. "Vorak, initiate resonance protocol." The physician's eyes widened. "Your Majesty, that's never been attempted with an alien species. The chances of compatibility—" "Do it." Vorak hesitated only a moment before his hands flew across holographic controls. "Resonance protocol initiated. Preparing neural link." Sareth placed her hands on Elian's temples, feeling the crystalline matrices beneath her skin begin to glow. The resonance protocol was ancient Orchestrian technology, a way to share life force between compatible individuals. It had saved countless Orchestrian lives over millennia. No one knew if it would work on a human. Energy flowed from Sareth into Elian, her consciousness touching his for the briefest moment. She felt his pain, his determination, his absolute conviction that saving Lyria had been worth any cost. She felt the core of what made humans terrifying and wonderful, their capacity to choose others over themselves, even unto death. But she also felt something else, a fierce will to live, not for himself, but because a little girl needed him to keep his promises. The medical monitors began to stabilize. Elian's breathing steadied. The catastrophic wounds began to close as Orchestrian energy knitted human flesh together in ways that should have been impossible. When Sareth finally pulled back, exhausted, Elian's eyes were clear. "That," he croaked, "was weird." Lyria laughed through her tears, and Sareth felt her own face contort into what humans called a smile. 3 days later, when the Galactic Council convened to discuss humanity's membership application, Queen Sareth delivered a speech that would be studied for generations. "You ask what humans bring to our civilization," she said, her voice resonating through the chamber. "They bring something we've forgotten in our millions of years of advancement. They bring the willingness to stand between darkness and those who cannot fight. They bring promises kept even when dying. They bring love fierce enough to reshape biology itself." She looked directly at the council members who'd once mocked humanity. "A human lay fading after protecting my daughter. I would not accept his death. And now I will not accept humanity's exclusion from our ranks. They've proven themselves in ways our tests never could measure." The vote was unanimous, and in the medical bay, Elian taught Princess Lyria her first chess opening, keeping his promise as humans always did, against impossible odds, despite the pain, because that's what humans were. They were the species who refused to accept that anything was truly impossible.